January 14th, 1858. At Commons Farm in Old Town above Hebden Bridge lived William Shackleton, a farmer. And on that morning he looked out of his window down into the fields and could see what looked like an old bundle of clothes at the bottom of the field. By 4 p.m. his curiosity was piqued and he headed down the fields to have a look. And he was quite shocked to find that that bundle of old clothes was the horrifically mutilated body of a murder victim. Hi everybody, Matt back with you. Hope you're okay. In the distance, nestled on that hillside over there, is Old Town above Hebden Bridge, which is down in the valley. It's an area I probably know better than anywhere else, having lived there for a very, very long time. It was my childhood home and my relatives still live there, including my mum. And they'd been there for about a century before I arrived as well, or at least arrived here from Barnardo's. Like many places, it has its share of dark history over time. Just below me here, this house here was the scene of a horrific murder a few decades ago when a woman murdered her husband and set fire to the bed. My grandparents remember hearing the noise of the arguments from their house. They could hear them. Further away is the site of what was the Acre Mill, a location that has seen hundreds of asbestos-related deaths in the decades since it closed. Dark history. We're going back at least another 100 years today to 1858. An incredibly horrific murder took place just on the hills, essentially 3 fields away from where I used to live. So as mentioned, William Shackleton of Commons Farm headed down into this field at 4 p.m. on the 13th of January 1858 to examine what was in his field. It was just a few yards from the wall at the bottom of the field. He discovered it was a body, and it had been stabbed numerous times and hacked at in the left side. Also nearby was a rock taken from this wall. That rock was covered in blood and had been used to bludgeon the head of the victim. A rough guess is perhaps this tree in the foreground is about the same distance away from the wall as where the victim would have been. Although the body was not yet identified, for the sake of the story, it was the body of 31-year-old Bethel Parkinson. So the body of Bethel was brought down from Commons Farm to here, to the pub at Lane Ends, the Hare and Hounds. Seems to have been a tradition back then, if there is a body found, they bring it to the pub to put it on display to see if anybody recognises who it is. Seems very macabre to think about that today though. So this is the Hare and Hounds today. Obviously it's a nice hot sunny Sunday afternoon, so it's quite busy. Cars are heading down the hill. But yeah, got a picture of what it looked like a few decades ago. The body was on display for just one day, as it was identified as Bethel Parkinson by his father Samuel. Bethel lived in North Owerham and was a waggoner, a farmer and a dealer in horses and cattle. There's one thing I was thinking whilst I was stood by the field. I don't want to film too much there because I think it's a holiday cottage now, but obviously nothing happened in the house or anything. But they said that the rock was taken from a wall to smash his skull in. I wonder if the rock was put back on the wall. I started to think, could it still be there? And I'll never know which rock it would have been, whether they'd have taken it away. I don't think they did things like forensic evidence back in 1858. Yeah, it was a really weird kind of thought process. Is that rock back on that wall? Yeah. So the police enquiries began. How had Bethel ended up in the field? Had he been killed in the field or brought there in the darkness? Why would he have been up on these hills when he was from Halifax? And who had he been with? One name seemed to appear above all others whilst they were making their inquiries, including talking to Bethel's wife. She came up with the name of Joseph Shepherd, and Shepherd was said to accompany Bethel to some of the trade fairs that he'd gone to across Yorkshire and Lancashire, and it's likely when he went to these fairs that he ended up selling items and making quite a lot of money. On this particular occasion, it's said that Joseph was accompanying Bethel across Midgley Moor, where we've just been. And it was then realised that Bethel had indeed been heading back across the moors home, accompanied by Joseph. The body of Bethel was found with no money whatsoever, but his wife insisted that Bethel would have had money with him on that particular day. So Joseph's name was put into the book of people who needed to be spoken to, and it wasn't long before Joseph was in custody. However, he hadn't been caught. He'd actually come and handed himself in and admitted to his crime. He was described as being 22, quite short and slim build, a good-looking young man with an effeminate manner. So it was quite a surprise, whilst he was in custody, that his manner changed altogether and raised a lot of concerns with the people where he was being held prisoner. At this point in time, he'd obviously been found guilty and was awaiting execution. The following are from prison records taken at the time. Shepherd was a most hardened and impenitent wretch, and blasphemed to the last. On Tuesday before the execution, Shepherd said to one of the officers in the prison, "I don't mean to go to hell," whereupon the officer replied, "Don't you?" He said, "I have done the best I know how." "I don't think you have," said the officer. "In what way haven't I?" replied Shepherd. "Public justice demands a public confession," said the officer. Shepherd asked, "Would you have me confess what I never did?" The reply he received was, "No, but I believe you are guilty," and immediately he said, "I am not," despite his original confession, seeing him found guilty for the crime. Shepherd said that he hoped he could have a blowout before he was hanged, that he would like a good dinner, that he would rather go to hell than heaven, that he would rather be shot than hanged, and he was glad the weather was fine, as he would rather be killed in summer than in winter, and that if he caught the watchman in the burial ground after the execution, he would give him a good thrashing. In the week before his execution, he inquired if his coffin was made. The officer in charge told him that was not the sort of conversation he ought to indulge in, and asked him if he believed there was a God. Joseph said a reply too irreverent and too shocking to be repeated. On the day of his execution at York on the 3rd of April 1958, 10,000 people came to watch what was going to happen, including Bethel's widow and father. Due to the threat to the executioner that Joseph had made, he was brought out already covered in the white cap. Such was the ungodly nature in which Joseph had conducted himself in prison. No sacrament was administered, and no burial service read. The hanging took place, the body suspended by the noose for about an hour before being cut down and buried in the precincts of the prison. Okay, so now I'm in the Mount Zion church graveyard at Ogden in Halifax. This is the final resting place of the murder victim Bethel Parkinson. It is an absolutely stunning day. It's a perfect day to walk around. Unfortunately, I don't know quite where his grave is, but we'll give it a go. But some of it's a little bit overgrown. Fingers crossed we can find him. Interesting one. Wooden. Don't see that very often. I'm on the last row of the well-kept section, and these are all just far too new. 1930s up to about the 1960s in this area. So it looks like I'm going to have to try and have a search as best I can in the other section, but yeah, shorts maybe not a good idea today. Well, I'm being ripped to shreds by brambles, but we've had a bit of luck and found the gravestone we're looking for. So in the what I'll class as the overgrown ankle twisting section, we find just here, see where the church is if you ever want to come and visit here, the tombstone for Bethel. His name is actually quite near the bottom. There are obviously a few people here. I'll go from the top to the bottom slow as I can so you can read what's on here. So, sacred to the memory of Hannah Parkinson, daughter of Samuel and Hannah, of Mountain in North Owerham. Never heard of that place. Just 1 year old. Oh gosh, right, okay. Yeah, children. You see, John Parkinson, son, died 1 year and 3 months. Hannah Parkinson, oh, then his wife, passed away 1856, age 54. And then there is a kind of a poem. And then near the bottom we have Bethel Eli Parkinson, son of the above, who departed this life on the 13th day of January 1858 in the 31st year of age. And then his father, Samuel Parkinson, died in 1878, so 20 years later, age 79. So poor Samuel, I don't know quite how many children they've had. Yeah, so there's 2 babies essentially. His wife, his son Bethel, and then Samuel himself. Okay, there we go, folks. That is the story of the horrific, brutal murder of Bethel Parkinson by Joseph Shepherd. A story from almost, now heading towards 2 centuries ago. Okay, thanks for watching. We will see you for the next video very soon. I hope you've enjoyed the beautiful weather we've had this weekend. Take care. Bye for now.